try to keep it this way?
We're not hiding under sheets. We're here. Take us how we are, like it or not.
In a perfect world, everybody would get along and there'd be no need for people like us. But it's not. And anything that's polluting our culture and polluting our race needs to be stopped.
The FBI, the Anti-Defamation League, and Klan Watch, experts who've been tracking skinheads, report that racist skins are the fastest growing faction in the white supremacist movement, committing hundreds of acts of assault, vandalism, and murder. ADL figures from 1987 to 1990 document 6 murders committed by skinheads. Over the next 3 years, the number of murders committed by skinheads more than tripled. Skinhead violence and hate are being harnessed. Skins are being aggressively courted to become the future of the racist right. And today, skinhead gangs have something they never had before: unity and a sense of mission.
It's a quiet area. So if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere. If there is any kind of activity going on, right, this is a good place to hide it.
Hate hides here, in quiet little communities like Salisbury Township, a picturesque suburb of Allentown, Pennsylvania. 11-year-old Eric Freeman was scared of his own big brothers. His favorite Aunt Valerie had recently moved out of this house, scared to death for her own life. When Valerie asked Eric how he was getting on with his brothers, the child confided in her. "You never know when you're going to die." Eric's mom, Brenda, was also scared of her own sons. They'd grown a lot bigger than her, both over 6 feet. The older, David, a hulking 245 pounds. They developed a fascination with Nazi literature and a skinhead dress. And then one day the boys came home with tattoos right across their foreheads. 2 weeks later, the Freeman parents and their youngest son, Eric, were found brutally murdered. The weapons used: a baseball bat, a pickaxe handle, an exercise weight bar, and a knife. Eric was murdered in his bed. His father was beaten with a bat, his skull cracked open, and his mother, her body left lying in the hallway, naked from the waist down, was stabbed and bitten.
This is one of the most savage, brutal, cowardly acts of murder that I've seen in a while, and I've been involved in this for quite a while.
In a tape recording played at the arraignment, David Freeman, ever cool and calm, explained the process. "My mom came downstairs. My brother took a knife and started stabbing her. I went upstairs and I was beating my dad in the face with a baseball bat and cut his throat. I went to my little brother and smashed his face. 2 sons, a vicious murder. The lingering question still unanswered. Why?" Perhaps some reasons for the Freeman murders will be found here, at the annual Aryan Festival in Oklahoma. Years earlier, experts said that skinheads would grow out of it. Citing their lack of organization, they assured the country that skins posed no real danger. A decade later, these kids aren't just growing out of it. Skinheads today are being recruited by adult racist groups, and coalitions are being forged between skins and racist political and religious sects.
It's really good to be here with the boys from Tulsa and the band. We hope you enjoy their music, and let's have a little white power here. White power! White power!
Tom Metzger is at the epicenter of the campaign to utilize skinhead hate. Metzger is the organizer of a series of such festivals nationwide.
Well, if they're brainwashed, what should they do when they wake up?
Become a skinhead, quit drugs, and
Quit
get
drugs.
some pride in their race and get
Be
some pride in themselves.
Maybe kick some ass once in a while?
Yeah.
Metzger was a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan and member of the John Birch Society. Feeling these parties were too soft, in 1983, Metzger founded his own, more militant organization, White Aryan Resistance, WAR for short, to promote a racial separatist revolution in America. By the late 80s, Metzger had found the troops for his growing army, skinheads. Aimless and angry, he began to infuse them with ideology and a mission.
Skinheads will make excellent urban guerrillas in a Cold War situation.
Essential ingredient to skinhead lifestyle is music. Metzger knows that for these kids, propaganda spread through music is more potent than the spoken or written word.
It's been a failure of the right wing, I know, for decades, not to get into the music business.
With loud live bands and slam dancing to the beat, Metzger works like a maestro, using racist music to arouse raw emotions.
And so music that kids like and also has the racial message is perfect. And so very basically and with malice aforethought, I supported it wholeheartedly.
Today, the white Aryan resistance is mustering its foot soldiers, inviting skinheads into the fold and indoctrinating them with racist rhetoric.
And of course, Metzger would advertise, there's going to be plenty of beer there, kids, plenty of beer. He would have skinhead heavy metal bands come in and play this white power music.
Johnny Lee Clary, another former KKK Grand Dragon, once Tom Metzger's right-hand man.
Hell the order!
He spent years stoking the skinhead fire.
What we're doing in White Aryan Resistance, we're going to the factory workers, we're going to the farmers, we're going to the truck drivers, we're going to the youth. That's why we've got such a fantastic skinhead organization.
The Skinheads are a group of young men and women that I wished was around when I was a teenager.
We've got to center on the youth because the youth of today is going to decide what kind of nation that we live in tomorrow.
Because I would have been one. I'd have been right there with them. You see, they've got racial pride.
As Clary explains it, the Metzgers fuel the recruitment drives with the argument that affirmative action has destroyed white America.
Metzger had a thing here in California called Aryan Woodstock every year, which and then in Oklahoma he had Aryan Fest, and all these kids come and they're out there slam dancing, they're getting drunk, and then the Metzger has certain people which he would appoint, he would put them in charge of tilling the fields, and he would have them come up and befriend visitors to these meetings and begin to pat them on the back and say, hey, what do you think of this so far? Would you like to party like this all the time? I'll tell you what, we'd sure like to have you with us. And they say, see those rich kids, they drive a brand new car their parents bought for them, and you've never been given anything all your life. You'll never have a future. You can't go to college because you don't have a United Negro College Fund working for you, and you can't get a job because affirmative action gives all the jobs to the minorities in this country. So you're white, you've lost. The only way you're going to succeed in life and win and be anything is if you come with us and you join with us. We're going to have a white revolution in this country because that's the only solution.
In 1993, in the first case of its kind, a civil court in Portland, Oregon connected skinhead violence with old line racists, finding the Metzgers guilty of inciting violence and handing down a record $12.5 million judgment. No longer could skinheads be considered leaderless and disorganized. Things had changed.
You got to be willing to do what has to be done, and if you have to go down or go to the prison for it, you have to do it. But talk is not going to win the war.
For the Metzgers, the adoption of leaderless skinheads, infusing them with a mission and a message, is hardly an accident.
They're attractive to me because they are generally the sons and daughters of white middle class, in most cases, sometimes white poor. This is a generation that's been, in a lot of ways, sort of been the throwaway generation. While their parents many times were liberals and afraid to make waves and into PC, these kids were getting beaten up in school by non-white gangs and so forth.
He points to people like Ashley Brown, who epitomizes his vision.
Here it is, the ADL Special Report on the Evil Neo-Nazi Skinheads. This is the 1990 status report put out by your favorite spy group and mine, the ADL.
Ashley Brown is the perfect model for Tom Metzger's new skinhead.
Are based in Claremont, where we are now. The gang, which consists of 5 hardcore members and another 10 less active members, has been quiet in recent months. They are led by Ashley Brown. I'm not prepared to be a 65-year-old racist and just saying, geez, everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. I play to win. I want to win. I want to see success.
With his hair grown out and his tattoos hidden under long-sleeve shirts, Ashley Brown no longer looks like a skinhead.
I'm a white activist, I'm a student, and I'm a businessman in that order. I don't really
His clean-cut appearance is deceiving. Brown hasn't rejected his racist past.
We're kind of upgrading a little bit. We're going to have a cover with a picture on it.
Brown puts out his own mailer, The Vanguard, a sophisticated high-tech newsletter for the next generation of skinheads.
Boys and more. And so this is the cover for the next one. You get to see this before anyone else.
Brown says he'll run for public office.
We're basically not getting representation, and so I want to represent white people.
And achieve a greater forum for his agenda.
I personally don't know of any politician at either the national, state, or even municipal level who will say openly and honestly, I represent the white majority of this country.
Like a natural-born politician, Brown chooses his words carefully.
There's a lot of things that can and should be done. I think establishing white institutions, white schools, white churches, and things of that nature, that's important. And trying to work for representative government and providing services to white people and providing entertainment to whites.
What we have advocated in the last few years was for skinheads to not be so visible, to make sure they get a good education, get into very good jobs, sensitive jobs, get in there where they can do us a lot more good.
My primary goal is the movement and is doing what I think is right and working for the cause. And throughout the world, skinheads are growing exponentially, and I think it's great.
So how are the skinheads going about expanding their base? When Investigative Reports returns, the packaging of the white power movement, from sophisticated mailing lists to flashy videos to messages on the internet.
I believe in America should be for whites, and if not America, just give us our own homeland, and we'd gladly will take it. You know what I mean?
Me, I'm a militant and reactionary. I'm waiting for something really bad to happen in this country, like a catastrophe or some widespread disease or something where we can use that as a foothold to take over a small part.
The language of the skinhead movement is music. The lyrics scream. The thrashing guitars send home an angry message.
It's got a message, and it's just plain fun. You know, it's something that's you can get into, jump around, yell, break stuff, do whatever you want to do, but it'll affect everybody differently, but it's affected everybody at one point in their life that's a skinhead as any kind of screwdriver uses.
But no longer is this an underground movement. It's manufactured, packaged, and distributed from places as pleasant as this Detroit suburb, Oak Park, Michigan. This is the home of Mark and Dana Wilson.
Hi, kids.
It's also the headquarters of Resistance Records.
Excuse me.
Resistance is the masthead for a record label, a magazine, a site on the internet, and a mailing list that grows daily.
About twice a week, and so the last time we went was 2 or 3 days ago, I guess. We started Resistance Records with a mailing list provided by a couple of bands. When we published our first magazine, the circulation was 5,000, and in less than a year's time, issue number 4 is up to 12,000. So it is growing at a phenomenal rate.
With bands like Bound for Glory, Aggravated Assault, and Rahowa, Resistance traffics in lyrics that herald hate.
We're trying to promote the general issue. And once enough people are convinced that the general idea of racial separatism is good, it's very easy then to sit down with members of the black community, sit down with members of the white community, and say, here's the problems our society faces, and this is a viable solution, racial separatism.
As lead singer of Rahowa and co-founder of Resistance Records, George Birdie helps Mark Wilson inspire white supremacists around the world.
Usually we get stuff from all over the world. Wherever there's white people, there's anti-white propaganda and white guilt in the media and in the educational system and white youth-rightists.
Our target audience is really white people anywhere. But I would say that white people that are most concerned about these problems are the young people.
California, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Nebraska.
The youth of today have been neglected by this society. They've been taught that, that white people are some sort of social pariah.
Kansas, Cincinnati. Here's one from Germany. Every white country in Europe we get mail from. We get mail from all over North and South America, including Argentina and Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and some other points just because of the military people. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and damn proud of it. Keep up the good work, we need you. I wish Resistance Records, or Resistance Mag came out monthly. I hunger for it. Thanks for being...
Fans often offer suggestions on how to serve the movement better.
Have you guys ever thought about making the white entertainment channel as opposed to the black entertainment channel network? This would be a good channel this would be a channel where we could see our own programming, our white power music videos. I hope that you take my idea into consideration and hopefully make it a reality for the future. And thank you. In 14 words, which is a slogan many of us use.
The white power movement has its own language.
Random here stands for we must secure the existence of white people and a future for white children.
This looks like good stuff, kid.
Dana Wilson prides herself on being an excellent Aryan mother. She divides her day between childcare and working for the cause.
There you go. Ricky, use your spoon. I think Resistance Records is cutting edge, but as far as Mark and I, no, that I wouldn't say. There are a lot of people that have the same views we do, are raising a family the same as we are, and participate in the movement the same way that Mark and I would.
Now Resistance is reaching out, using the borderless communications of the internet to spread the word and sell CDs.
Okay, now we'll go into the Resistance website. We're going to offer services where you can order the products right through the computer with your credit card. When you go into the news groups, there are, let's see, there's revisionism, skinheads, politics, white power, nationalism. I was actually surprised how much information I could get concerning the movement on the computer. I know that, like, along with just doing my daily 9-to-5 routine type things, that I'm content with the fact that I'm working to secure a future for my kids.
Tell you what, you got a 5. Now you got the tongue. Get a little bigger, I'll teach you how to shoot pool.
While Dana works, the Wilson children spend time playing with their parents' friends and business associates.
1, you got the body.
I want my children to grow up in a better world than the one I lived in. And the way things are going, it's not going to happen.
Resistance Records recently organized a tribute concert in Racine, Wisconsin. The concert honored Ian Stewart, leader of the British skinhead movement and lead singer of Screwdriver. Stewart, who died in a car crash, is a fallen hero to skinheads around the world. This concert is being edited MTV style into a home video for mass distribution.
I'm kind of inspired by all the white youth. The whole point of this movement and of Resistance Records and all the things we do, in my opinion, isn't because we're motivated out of hate, and it's not because of ignorance. It's because we want to leave a positive contribution to the world that we leave behind.
We want our own land where we can celebrate our own culture, unhindered by outside influences. We don't want to have to consider the world through somebody else's eyes.
The United Nations Charter clearly states that every race or group of people deserves a homeland, a piece of land of their own, and they have the right to self-affirmation. They have the right to explore and express their culture without outside influence, and to deprive them of that is genocide.
Wilson says his opinions are protected, citing free speech.
No Nazi kids, roll KKK! no racist, fascist USA!
Now his neighbors are voicing their own opinions.
Nazi scum has got to go! Hey, hey!
What do you have to say about all this?
Well, as I said, these people have the right to free speech as the United States. I wish they would honor ours. I don't think there's much of a point in protesting the type of music people wish to express themselves by.
While they're exercising their First Amendment rights to spread a loathsome philosophy and ideology, they're using a right which we at ADL and decent citizens everywhere can also use in order to counter that message of hate.
Tom Halpern authored Sounds of Hate for the Anti-Defamation League.
This is an issue of Resistance magazine, and
the ADL sees its mission as protecting the civil rights of all people, and Halpern is a staunch defender of the First Amendment.
This is a free society, and they have the right to hate, but we also have the right to fight back with words and to educate people and to try to put a stop to the very kinds of words that that later can kill by overcoming those words with educational words and and countering them with truth.
Next, how people like the Freeman brothers of Allentown, Pennsylvania, are recruited into the white supremacist movement. And when New Skinheads returns, the case of a teenage girl who said...
After being fingerprinted and processed, the Freemans were arraigned on murder charges.
This is murder. I don't sanitize a murder case for defense counsel or anyone.
There was a lot of hate in that family and hate aimed at the parents. And it was aimed at the parents because the parents really were trying to change them.
District Attorney Robert Steinberg is prosecuting the case.
They tried counseling, they were in placements, they tried everything that you can possibly imagine, but ultimately what they should have done is kick them out of the house. I think that would have happened, but they ran out of time.
One of the people contacted by the troubled parents before their death was Ann Van Dyke, who keeps track of skinheads for the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. Van Dyke believes that the Freeman murders are a symptom of a larger problem.
The concern is about the recruitment of young people into the hate movement.
Barry Morrison, director of the ADL for Eastern Pennsylvania, met with Mrs. Freeman once.
Freeman killings, to us, say that hatred and bigotry are not isolated phenomena.
The hate movement in America historically has been adults. Now more and more it is focusing on sucking young people into the hate movement.
News of the Freeman murders shocked neighbors for miles around. Among them, Marcia Heinrich.
Here's her jacket. She used to have I think there was like an Iron Cross or something on it.
The Freeman murders forced Heinrich to ask disturbing questions. Her daughter Emily was a skinhead as well. Was Emily just going through a teenage phase?
Actually, I hardly even...
Or was it something more dangerous?
This was her... Steve gave this to her. I remember when she got it, she was so thrilled. We'd been away somewhere, and he left it hanging on the back door. This one is pretty recent, and this is Emily.
Emily was just 16 when she moved out of the house and into a nearby compound run by a radical white supremacist.
Should we go sit under a tree?
You think that you know your child. I said that I was never afraid of her, but on the other hand, you know, you just don't know.
You know, I wore big black boots, and I had my flight jacket. It had a swastika patch, an upside-down American flag, and a Confederate flag on it.
You think that they would never do something like that, but then I guess you just... I don't know if they ever thought, if the Freemans really thought they'd be killed or not.
And Emily didn't see any harm in hanging out with the cool guys down the street.
At first, it was just social. I'd hang out with some of the younger, you know, the young guys who lived there. And it was something, you know, fun to do after school. I learned how to shoot guns, a lot of them. And then, I guess, the leader of this religion, he started bringing out the Bible and teaching me about what he believed, Christian identity.
The Christian identity movement has long-standing ties with white supremacists. In recent years, Mark Thomas's church has welcomed skinheads. Thomas, whose compound in eastern Pennsylvania is known as a haven for racial separatists, opened his arms and his home to Emily Heinrich.
A couple of years ago, I guess, we were having a Bible study, and there were a few skinheads, a few dozen actually, throwing snowballs at each other in the front yard having fun. And Emily went by, and, you know, there was a wolf whistler, too, and she was a very attractive young lady.
Thomas's reading of the Bible differs from mainstream religious study, and his students are not likely to use his message to become compassionate missionaries.
No one will be able to kill me. How can I describe him to you? And incidentally, in Isaiah 14, the Bible describes Satan as a man that seduced Eve and begot a race of children in the earth. So we have literal devils walking this earth today, even as we have literal sons and daughters of God. The swastika is biblical. If you look in the book of Ezekiel, it says this is the likeness of the glory of God.
I think Mark looks at skinheads as people who, yeah, he can use for his cause. They have that, that inner violence and everything ready to, and a lot of them are looking for something. Like, a lot of them regard Mark, I think, as a father figure. So he's kind of like their leader.
They're hungry for the truth. They're fed up with BS. And so am I.
If he can get them interested in his guns and his parties and everything, then he might be able to teach them identity. Or even if they don't go for it, at least they'll kind of be another person on his side.
Like Emily, the Freeman brothers are said to have sought truth at the Mark Thomas compound. Experts say that teenagers in search of friends and family are especially vulnerable.
People like Mark Thomas have become very adept at appearing to be father figures to disenfranchised young people, and they offer to meet those unmet needs.
The skinhead movement promises to satisfy that natural teenage urge to fit in and provides an outlet for youthful anger and frustration.
I guess we didn't really think of it as a skinhead problem. We thought of it as just a personal family problem.
But no, I became totally wrapped up in the whole lifestyle, and everything my parents said didn't matter, and everything they said to me when they were trying to get me out didn't matter at all.
We still didn't really credit that those were her true beliefs and that kind of thought. We just couldn't believe that she was a real white supremacist, really. She was just a rebellious kid. This one is...
And so families face expressions of hate with a confused mixture of disapproval and tolerance. Ignore it and it will go away, they say. The reaction experts claim may be the most dangerous of all.
When we were living in Allentown, she said something about she knew somebody that had a gun, and she was, you know, kind of threatening her dad.
Organized hate groups, including skinheads, do not create tension out of thin air. They feed off the resentment of everyday people.
Bigotry is something that can affect every family. Bigotry in its most dramatic forms can occur in the metropolitan areas and in the backwaters of America at any time and any place.
We want to believe that if we ignore them, they will go away. And in truth, silence is the welcome mat for hate.
Next, how that kind of hatred led to the vicious and brutal murder of an innocent young man in New York, and how that killing aroused a sleeper.
Looking for someone that was homeless, they were looking for someone black or Hispanic, or they were looking for someone homosexual.
What did scare me was that people felt they had permission to murder gay people in the neighborhood.
Here in this neighborhood schoolyard, in this working-class, family-oriented Queens community, Julio Rivera was stopped, bashed, and beaten to death. The perpetrators were 3 members of a skinhead gang called DMS, Doc Martin Stompers.
They really savaged Julio, and they turned him in about 20 seconds from a vibrant, well-thought-of, well-liked human being to someone who was basically dying on the street corner.
Okay.
Assistant DA Daniel McCarthy, who prosecuted the case, recalls that Julio was literally taken apart with a hammer, a wrench, a glass bottle, and a boot knife. The victim just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The attackers had never even met Julio Rivera.
I met Julio when I was about 15, and he was about 9, maybe less. And I grew up with him.
Sister-in-law Peggy Rivera still frequents the neighborhood bar that Julio loved.
He had a lot of friends. He was very well liked. It was a lot of fun. And this picture captures that. I like it.
Julio was murdered simply because he was gay. Therefore, the murder should have been classified as a hate crime, but it wasn't easy to get the community to recognize the hatred seething in their own hometown.
Now, it was the police who probably held up justice from being served any faster than it was, because they did not want to pursue this as a hate crime.
It was not until a bit later on in the investigation, where there was a lot of pressure from community groups and gay organizations, that the police took a second look at it and really started to hit the investigation hard.
Whose streets? Our streets! Whose streets? Our streets!
Gay activists began to organize the community. They didn't want Julio's murder to be dismissed as just another murder.
Skinheads slide, BG Brown, doing time.
The activists wanted the police, the media, and the mayor to recognize the depth of skinhead bigotry.
They put a lot of pressure on City Hall. There was constant agitation in the community.
The Anti-Violence Project educated their own community and then started demonstrations and brought in the media.
I think the motivations for the crime, the selection of the victim, the location in which it took place, and the manner in which Julio was killed just cried out depravity. And ultimately, that's what the jurors felt too.
The community began to fight back. And they demanded justice.
What they found out was that the average person, even the average, what are traditionally thought of as conservative Queens jurors, have absolutely no stomach for this kind of thing. Think this is wrong.
I want to be sure that Julio's death is not in vain. He died a horrible death, and he was a really nice guy.
For the friends and family of Julio Rivera, community activism forced the police to act only after his death. But within law enforcement, experts now argue that more has to be done to stop skinheads before they kill.
6636 County, 6636.
Hate crime statistics place New Jersey as the #1 haven for skinheads. It's also home to law enforcement's acknowledged skinhead expert, Detective Lewis Jordan.
For example, you see the Celtic cross, which is here. You see the term Sikh Heil. And it is not uncommon to see that skinheads, again, are leaving their trademark and their mark in places where they need to be. I mean, here you have SH for skinhead, and then you have SS, which is skinhead security, once again. You have the KKK for the Klan, the swastika, but yet we also find that people are still truly in denial in terms of what's going on.
Jordan's expertise is reading what he calls the street newspaper, the language of tattoos and graffiti.
Exactly what's going on. And here we see clearly in white power, he's telling you to look up. So on the opposite side...
Skinhead hieroglyphics that mark gang territory, identify political or religious affiliation, and boast of crimes committed.
Well, this tells me that we're talking about a neo-Nazi skinhead. We see the spider web, which alludes to the fact that a skinhead has been involved in some type of a homicide, at least participated in a homicide. The Antichrist...
Jordan keeps tabs. He notices when local skinheads add another tattoo to the tableau. It's an essential part of his intelligence gathering.
Okay. Clearly, the spider web on the elbow, again, alluding to the fact that this skinhead has, at least to his knowledge, has admitted to engaging in some form of a homicide or a severe aggravated assault, which we know for a fact he has engaged in.
Seen through Jordan's eyes, tattoos like the ones on Tom and Lars at Resistance Records in Michigan are symbols filled with real meaning. Coming up, the stories of two people who came to reject the white power hatred and why. But as we learn, their movement continues to grow, and their incidents of violence continue to rise. According to the Anti-Defamation League, the number and severity of skinhead crimes is on the rise, ranking them now as among the most vicious of all white supremacist groups.
They've been responsible for well over 30 murders in the last several years in this country, and they have replaced even the Ku Klux Klan, I would say, as the most violent segment of the white supremacist movement in the U.S.
Skinheads are uniformly brutal and violent. This is not the first time that skinheads have murdered one of their own. Skinheads have killed an 83-year-old grandmother in the course of a robbery. Skinheads in this state have buried a dog up to its neck and put firecrackers in its mouth.
There are two phenomena that's going on. One is that skinheads are becoming more difficult to recognize because they are changing their uniform and growing their hair. But the other is that we are trying hard to ignore their presence and their impact and their message because we don't want them to be there.
I always looked at us as kind of being like the white blood cells of the white race. I mean, when the body has a sickness, the white blood cells come out and attack it. That's what skinheads were. We were a natural, instinctual reaction of the white race.
We've got to promote ideas that I believe are the basic family values and the basic concept of pride that the average white American feels.
I think Hitler was somewhat liberal. I would have been more ruthless.
Do you want your little...
Despite the rhetoric, not all children who are recruited into the hate movement are doomed to be lifelong converts. Emily Heinrich was able to break free.
What you got in your nose?
But only after she found herself pregnant, the baby's father a hardcore skinhead.
It was like a cold splash water. I just had to leave and get my own life back on track. And then this new little life. Here, some peach cobbler. No? It's too cold, huh? Nice face. Some of them think they're going to die for a cause, definitely. Some of them talk about overthrowing the government. Others talk about, like, the race war that's going to come, that they think they have to start.
Now Emily Heinrich is discovering her own voice.
They probably still think I'll come back, and there's no way. I guess I just look at it as another chapter in my life. I think I learned a lot from the experience, and I guess I'm glad I get the opportunity to kind of inform people about them.
Hell the order!
Today, Tom Metzger's former right-hand man, Johnny Lee Clary, is preaching a different gospel.
From the works of darkness. I realize that some of our members are racist. Some of our members hold those type of philosophies.
I kept hearing things, talk of extermination. I kept hearing talk about how to gas the Jews and how to murder the blacks and things like that. I couldn't seem to go along with that.
And he thinks Metzger should be held responsible for teaching hate to young people.
If there was a law in this country that said Metzger can be held responsible for what he's taught them children and he has to do jail time, Metzger would be doing probably 5,000 years in the penitentiary with no choice of parole.
Clary is trying to even the score by turning in his hate-mongering for a pastor's pulpit.
And it's plain and simple. Let me give you the old Johnny Lee version. This is 1 Johnny Lee 7:10. If you lie down with dogs, you're going to get up with fleas. And if you lie down with skinheads, and if you lie down with paramilitary haters, and you lie down with Ku Klux Klansmen, you're going to get up with hate, baby.
Authorities may not be able to silence the skinheads until their taunts turn to crimes.
What's scary right now is more the fact that the lunatic fringe is coming off the fringes and they're becoming more mainstream, and that's something that we have to watch out for.
But beyond their immediate victims, there is another reason to take the skinhead threat very seriously.
Youth are often used to do the dirty work of the adult racist movement. Nationwide, we are seeing that the Aryan Nation movement and the Christian identity movement, and the Christian identity movement is the religious arm of the Aryan Nation movement, so they're really one. But nationwide, we are seeing an increasing emphasis on the recruitment of youth.
Be careful!
And the damage they do, many feel, is to the very fabric of American society.
Their penchant for violence, their lack of discipline, make them a very sinister and very unwelcome presence on the American scene today.
We look at skinheads as young people who have fallen through our safety net. Skinheads tend to be badly disenfranchised from their families and from mainstream America in general.
The bottom line with me, at least from where I sit, is that is still someone's child out there, and that child is in crisis. somewhere along the line, somebody or something in terms of an agency has let that child down.
Parents have to recognize the signs, whether it's signs of wearing Doc Martens or it's signs of drug use. Parents have to pay attention. In this fast-paced society, oftentimes parents are too busy to pay attention to the signs. And if they don't, then they could face this situation.
Skinheads are a different form of hatred and prejudice, which has been a feature of American life as long as we've been a country. And they are a very colorful way. They're a very dramatic statement about prejudice and hate. They manage to get our attention, and that's fortunate because it helps to keep our sights on prejudice so that we will be more likely to not take it, look at it casually, and to be more likely to redouble efforts to respond to it and keep it in check.
While it may seem that free speech allows these groups to grow and flourish, free expression may also be the most powerful antidote to hate.
I always say be proactive, admit we got a problem, then collectively we come together to address the problem. Denial will get you nowhere.
What hate needs to flourish is the silence of good people. We've learned this generation after generation, and it's still true.
They just look like any normal guy. They have normal haircut, they dress very nicely, but they hate.
For more than a decade now, the Justice Department has had a special unit assigned to prosecute hate crimes, but they are limited in what they can do. The reason? Legally, they are not allowed to monitor a group unless it is suspected of a crime. But there may be another answer. These racist organizations have spawned a counter-movement. There are now about 300 anti-racist groups in the United States. These clusters conduct serious studies of racist organizations, maintain files on them, and log on to their websites. And when they feel something is about to happen, they speak out. While no one is saying this will put an end to hate crimes, it is hoped it might prevent a few. I'm Bill Curtis.